Over to you, Sybil. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Irene. Let's go with this. And I think I don't know if I'm going to put it in slide show view. I like to kind of be able to go back and forth between my slides a little bit easier. And that way you don't have all of this text like up in your face. Probably a little bit better. So if you were here with us on Tuesday, a quick recap. This is just the second session of looking at alternative grading. And on Tuesday, I felt like we kind of, or at least I tried to kind of cover the definitions that go along with alternative grading. I call myself an ungrader. Some people just call themselves like people who use alternative assessments or something. There's labor-based graders out there, and that's kind of within that umbrella. The people who do specs grading, I feel like they're kind of in that too. The Venn diagram probably overlaps with that. There's so many different types of ways to just get away from the traditional grading the way that we've always done it, which, you know, when you hear that, oh, we've always done it this way, you should probably question why. And I feel like this community started doing that way before I got involved in 2019. But yeah, so Tuesday was basically looking at alternative grading, and I kind of assumed a little bit that most people had already dipped their toes into this type of thing. And then I also reported back, asked a lot of questions of all of you, but I also reported back on what I got from the grading conference in June. And I think that was their second annual conference. I think it was a 3-day thing. It was really, there was a lot of good sessions. So I tried to summarize what I got out of it. And that's why I kind of brought those ideas to Tuesday as a starting point. And now today is kind of like the practical part. Like, okay, so Sybil talked about some stuff on Tuesday, and maybe you are an alternative grader already, but what are some other practical things we can be doing in the classroom, since some of you might be starting a semester like I am in a couple of weeks. So I'm hoping today is more the practical, and maybe Tuesday was kind of theory, ideas, just, you know, very abstract things, I guess. So with that said, I do know that we might have some awkward silences as people think. I don't plan to rush you too much. I mean, we do have an hour together, and then I'm obligated to drive to Fargo to go hang out with my nieces. So as much as I love all of you and would like to stay here past 10 Central Time, I need to go hang out with little kids who are just full of, like, they help me distract from all the world, right? It's so nice to be around children sometimes because they have just absolutely no idea how crazy the world is. And so I can't wait to hang out with my nieces. Anyway, the second part of the paragraph on this slide deck says that I do want to give participants choices in how they interact. So if you want to speak up, cool. If you are a chat person, you want to put stuff in the chat, that's wonderful. Or if you would rather do all this very introverted on a Microsoft Word document of your own, or on a piece of paper. I know if you are an English teacher like myself, you probably have a gazillion journals that you probably never use for anything. So go ahead and get those journals out and use those, or what have you. And I did get that idea. That's not an idea original to myself. I went to a webinar once where a woman was in person, and she gave all of them a bunch of choices for what they could do after she brought up an idea, and same with her virtual participants. And I just thought, I want to do this in my class, but also if I ever give a webinar again, I do want to do that where everybody has a choice, because we all kind of learn differently. I don't know if I believe in all those learning styles, but we all learn a little differently. Like I don't know if any of you are podcast people. I can't get into them. I'm not an audio learner. I just can't do it. God bless, but I can't do it. I mean, there's one that I can listen to, but the woman swears. I think that's why I like it. So anyway. Okay, a little bit more about me if you don't know who the heck I am. I'm Sybil Priebe. I am an associate professor and program coordinator of English and Humanities at the North Dakota State College of Science in Wapaton, North Dakota. Basically about an hour south of Fargo, if anybody's familiar with that, or if you are familiar with Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Minnesota, I'm about 3 hours to the northwest of that big conglomeration of cities. And the North Dakota State College of Science is a big, like that's a lot of words for a pretty small college. We brag that we have about 3,000 students, and I adore most of them. We always get one or two that drive me a little bonkers, but I just adore them. I've taught various writing and humanities classes at the high school level, university level and community college levels since 1999. Sometimes I feel very old, and sometimes I feel like I just started doing all this. So it's always weird, right? I think a lot of teachers feel like that. I have quite a bit of experience with OER and OEP, which if you're not familiar with those acronyms, Open Educational Resources and Open Educational Pedagogy. What that means is basically I have written quite a few of my own textbooks for my students. And I say written, but sometimes I've really just compiled what other really cool people have put out there. And either it's in the public domain or they've put a Creative Commons license on it. And I just love, since I am a writer myself and a compiler of my own thoughts, I love compiling textbooks that are going to be digitally free for my students. And then I've started using Amazon, their independent publishing service, to print them, because for some reason their paper, like if I print through them and don't give myself a royalty, it's cheaper than our copy center on campus, which I haven't figured out where they're getting their paper, but whatever. And I even had our copy center people say, if your students can get a better deal through Amazon, then you should print your stuff through that. So I've already gotten the blessing of that. Not only am I into that kind of nerdy stuff, I am an ungrader. I have started to dabble with AI as far as using chatbots for certain things. I do see their possibilities, but I see some barriers, or not barriers, some weird things with them. And I have started to play around with high flex class design, which means I have a cohort, students sign up for my class, and then I have a cohort that might be fully online, a cohort that might be fully face-to-face, and they can switch back and forth based off of illness in the family, or they have to travel or something like that. So, I think I mentioned this on Tuesday, because I am an OER nerd and an ungrader, I am pretty much the black sheep on my campus. People kind of just look at me like I'm a little weirdo, and I am kind of an odd duck, but I am the one in many meetings always saying it should be about student learning. We should be doing this, we should be doing that. And I do get a lot of side eyes, but I'm gonna keep talking so they can just deal with it. All right, let's start talking a little. Okay, I think I did cover a little bit of a recap already with this session from Tuesday. There is a lot of intersectionality between alternative assessment, alternative grading, whatever you want to call it, and open pedagogy. The idea of choice, the idea of student agency, that pops up. Just the idea of kindness in the classroom. And I think Kate Denal, is that her name? I think that's how you pronounce her name. I follow her on the Twitter, or X, whatever it's called now. But she just put out a book called The Pedagogy of Kindness. I think that's the title. And a lot of that intersects with this as well. And then when you look at AI, you have to start asking yourself, okay, well, students were cheating before. Why were they cheating before AI? Well, I had students handing in, Wikipedia articles and pretending that they were their own writing. And my theory is there's the reason that there's an intersection here is that students feel like they procrastinate. There's some kind of time stamp, not time, there's time constraints that we're putting on them. Well, as an ungrader, I've kind of backed off on saying everything has to be due here. So now I've taken away that time constraint thing, which is probably why they used Wikipedia before and why they might use AI. So if you take away some of those things that cause them to cheat, I think you kind of move away from them wanting to even use it. Another thing, the failure. And I know that we talked about the 4 pillars on Tuesday, but allowing them to do the assessments again, to just redo them basically, that also gets away from them wanting to like get into a panic, use something that's not theirs. If they know they can fail the first time and redo it, I think they'll also stay away from trying to quote unquote cheat, whatever that looks like. Like I said before, we talked about the definitions of alternative grading, the 4 pillars. There was a session I went to about how to grade or ungrade and unessay, and that was wild. And so I do have some links further up in this slide deck. And then there was an instructor, a teacher, professor, who talked about all the different grading options he gives to his students. So they can choose portfolio grading or labor-based or single point rubric. I mean, he gives them so much choice. It's wonderful. It overwhelmed me, but I wanted to bring that up as, kind of one of the extremes, I guess. And then I did share some keynote summaries and quotes. So if you want to go back at any point in time, day 1 of this is just a couple of slides up. So slides 1 through 20 were from Tuesday. All right, slide 26. So today, for the next 45-ish minutes, we'll kind of just play around with backwards design, which was heavily pushed in one of the keynotes that I mean, I think backwards design is very interesting anyway, but that was one of the big things that was talked about in quite a few sessions now that I think about it, not just a keynote that I attended. So there's that. I have some reflection ideas that we can speak to and talk about what kind of reflections we do want our students to do, feedback ideas, and then syllabus ideas. And of course, you don't have to take everything from this. I think most of us, if you're somewhat of an experienced instructor, when you go to a conference or go to a webinar, you take what kind of like affects you at the moment. So if just one of these ideas like helps you, that makes me so happy. I don't expect you to like use all of this, but I think reflection is so important for teachers to do, metacognition in general. That's why I keep my own blog. But I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. You all know that reflection is good for us. So that's kind of what we'll do today, but also put it into practice, thinking through some of the outcomes for our courses. So I'll start here with the backwards design thing. I have a grid that I'll show you that a chat bot helped me with. But basically, when it comes to backwards design, from what I have learned of it, you look at the outcome for the class and then ask yourself, how will students kind of prove to you or give you evidence that they learned that thing? So I just I didn't create the new class, but I'm teaching a new class this fall called English 220. It's intro to literature, very basic level intro to lit. And one of the outcomes here that I have in quotation marks: read, study, evaluate, and appreciate literature. And then also there's in parentheses literary criticism. So when I thought about this and asked a chatbot and kind of like even tweaked what the chatbot gave me, the three choices that it popped up with that students could complete to showcase that they had learned this outcome of just reading, studying, evaluating, and appreciating literature. One option, create a video essay. Now, are all my students really tech savvy? I think we kind of assume they all are, but not all of them are. And some of them don't like to look at their faces. Like I don't always like to look at my face. So that's just one option, right? Then the second option here, the second bullet, annotate a text and present your annotations to the class. For somebody who's much like more introverted, perhaps they might like that idea. And then the third one here, I'm so sorry. Write a reflective essay on how a piece of literature has impacted your view on a specific topic. So here, just those three that I believe I got from a chatbot and then tweaked them to make them sound better for myself. Just this right here, that could be for just one outcome. And of course they could choose. And then if you really wanted to get complex about it, you could have them all assess themselves in various ways. Like the video essay, maybe there's a process letter that goes along with that. The annotated text, maybe that's a rubric where they had to do so many things. I want to show you what the chatbot also gave me. I think I'll make this a little bit bigger. So when I went to, I think it was ChatGPT, I said, here are my outcomes. Please give me a 5x5 chart grid of activities. And since the English 220 that I just told you about, I am going to teach that as a high flex. So I will have a couple of students in an online cohort, pretty much fully online, and then a face-to-face cohort. So when I asked the chatbot for this grid of activities based off of all the outcomes, I also said I need some in-person and virtual options because not everything can be done online, not everything can be done face-to-face, that sort of thing. So you can see here in this grid, and I know that we have some people who have different types of sight abilities than myself. It's just a basic 5x5 grid here where the first column gives us the outcome of the course. I threw those into the chat bot, of course. And then columns 1 through 5, or 2 through 5, I should say, are activities. And some of them are in person and some are virtual. And so I don't know if I'm going to use all of these, but I love the idea of saying, okay, students, here's the outcome that we're supposed to cover in this course. How would you like to do, let's look at these activities that the chatbot gave us. Are any of these cool? Are any of them something you would actually find some joy in creating. And you can see the video thing is there. The annotated text is there. So I like how this gives me some ideas for choices for them. I don't know if I'll use all of them, but that is one way that AI is kind of helpful. Is like I haven't taught an intro. I'm not really a literature person, more into composition and helping my students write. So this was kind of new for me to think about all the different ways that students could prove or learn. I shouldn't say prove, but they could learn that outcome. So that's just one outcome there. And then I'm going to go to my next slide. Another outcome was analyze literature using a variety of critical approaches and lenses. So here the choices that it gave me were to write blog posts, applying different critical theories to a chosen text. That's pretty interesting. I'm a blogger myself, but again, not all of my students probably are. The second choice was to develop a podcast episode. Maybe some who aren't really big on showing their faces might like a podcast idea because it's just your voice. I shouldn't say just your voice because maybe not everybody likes their voice either. And then this last one is very creative. Create a mind map connecting various critical theories to literature pieces that we've studied. That one just seems really creative to me. And I'm guessing a lot of my students would jump into that one. But I wanted to show you how by using chatbots and my own like brainwaves, I've been trying to figure out all the different ways students can show evidence of these outcomes. So I think here's where you guys come in. I do have some questions like I did on Tuesday. And so here's our little activity to start off with, so I don't have to talk too much more. Think of an outcome for one of your courses. And if you can't think of one, I mean, you might have like I know for my English 110, like our very base level writing class, there's one outcome that's like students should be able to narrow a topic down to a manageable size or it's really abstract. So that one, I don't love that one, but if you think of I would like you to try to think of an outcome for one of your courses, and it might be kind of abstract. It might make sense to you, and that's great. Question one is, how do you assess that outcome right now? And does it allow for student choice if that's what you want to, if you're going to go that route? Question two, what other ways could you assess whether your students have learned that outcome? Because like with the failure thing, if they fail at the one choice that you give them, do you have kind of a backup? I like the number three, so I do plan on probably giving my students three choices and try to hit on all the different creativity they might have. Like I said, if they're really into like audio explanation, they might like podcasting. If they don't mind doing a video, if they're really into TikTok or whatever, maybe they want to do a video. And so I want you, and if you need to go on your computer to look for a quick outcome of one of your courses or whatever, that I completely understand that. But I would like us to pause and think of these questions. So how do you assess a certain outcome right now? Does it allow for student choice? And then what other ways could you assess it? So what other ways could you probably do that? And if you want to go to a chatbot, if you just want to use your own brain, that's fine. But I want us to kind of dig into an outcome that you are frustrated with right now, one that maybe is a little stale in your classes, perhaps. Like I have a few in my classes that they're not really like, they don't sound like really interesting outcomes. And so you almost have to add a little spice to them for students to want to learn it, right? So like I said before, if you want to just journal on screen or paper to yourself, that's fine. If you want to speak audibly to or verbally to all of us, like what you're thinking, or put it in the chat, I think we'll just pause there and I'll ask you to do a little bit of thinking on outcomes and how you're assessing them. Oh, Christina, thank you for putting her book in there. I knew it was, yeah, Pedagogy of Kindness. Good stuff. So here's where the awkward silence comes in. So I will just let you all think about an outcome that you're assessing. How are you assessing it? Do you want to add choice? Do you want to do it a different way? Where are you all at? So what Christina says in the chat, one outcome that she has in her philosophy class is to make a claim about a philosophical issue and defend it. Oh, I like that. I usually do this through assigned essays, but I could have students create slideshows, a video essay, a more informal blog type. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that outcome could be met. I love that. In my English 120 class, they have to do a lot of arguments. So I do mini arguments is what I call them, just 500 words or less. And a couple of them, like I make them, we start off with silly questions at first or prompts. And one of them is food based because the OER textbook that I created is called Cereal is Soup. So they have to argue whether cereal is soup or like some other, what's like, oh, what, like hot dogs or tacos. And the one that I saw on Twitter once was that calzones are actually Pop-Tarts. And so like they have to like you have to argue and students, I mean, these are silly topics to me, but students get very invested and like Sybil, cereal is not soup. You are just losing it. And I'm like, but it is, like so I love when they really I like the whole like they take some kind of issue and defend it because they get very passionate about food. Who knew? The other thing I can think of too is when I taught high school, the English teacher next door, he did something really sneaky. He had their first essay was they had to write just a very passionate argument about any topic that was just very near and dear to them. So the one girl who was in one of my classes, like a publication class, Leslie, she wrote about being a vegetarian and she's very passionate about it. Well, then the sneaky thing that he did was essay number 2 was you had to argue the opposite. And she was furious. She had to argue that, being a carnivore was okay and all this stuff. And I just remember her being in my class freaking out, just losing it because she did not want to argue that you should eat meat. And he really had them thinking about that was really wild. It was really wild. Does anybody else have an outcome and assessment choices that they use right now that they'd like to share before we can sneak on to the next thing if you want? Okay, I think I'll wait like maybe one more minute and just see if anybody's tossing around an idea in their head. Oh, David, thank you for one of my critical thinking skills. Oh, yes. Analyze the debate afterwards because sometimes chat doesn't always have it all right. I love that. Talk about science. Okay. I think when you make things personal, that always helps, Heather. And I think we've probably talked about that before. I teach a hearing science course. Okay. Right, Cindy, you want it to stay with them. And isn't that so important that we want the learning to happen so it stays with them? And sometimes a quiz or a test might do it, but that is the tough part is what other ways could they understand the concepts, right? I've heard of some of the science teachers we're close by in the building that I'm in. And I know one of them they assign the students, like, I don't want to call them trading cards, but like maybe flashcards is better, but they have to make their own little flashcards and share those within a group or something. I don't know the details of the whole assignment, but that's one way. I think it was an anatomy class, which I don't think that probably pertains perfectly to what you're doing, but yeah. And see, yeah, when people can't remember very much of it, that stinks. Yeah. Well, maybe as we go through this, we'll leave some time at the end for questions. And if anybody has ideas for Cindy wants to put some in the chat or anything else, that would be wonderful. Let's hop over to slide 30. And here's where we're getting to reflection. So I have some links here to beginning, middle, end reflections that you could use or play with if you don't really. I do have my students reflecting at the beginning of the semester, middle, and end. I really look forward to reading those. I used to say that I loved leaving my creative writing students their projects for the end of the semester because I loved ending my semester with their stuff. And now I really like the fact that I end with reflection in all of my classes. So I get to just hear what they're thinking about how everything went. And I think this link, this might be older. I think I might have tweaked some of these, and these aren't very big for you guys on the screen, are they? Okay, so beginning of the semester, what do you think you will learn in this class? What do you think about taking a class what do you think about taking a class that's not focused on grades? Is there anything I should know about you that will help me understand you and how you learn? I did steal that from another teacher, so I can't take the credit for that one. But that one's really interesting because students will be upfront usually about their ADHD, or a lot of my trade students will say it needs to be hands-on. It needs to be something I can actually touch and tactile and actually do something, play with it. And so that works with writing because they have to play with paragraphs and sentences and all that kind of thing. At the middle of the semester, I'll ask, how do you feel about your participation thus far? I don't grade on participation because I just feel like that's very classist. We don't know why they're missing class and why they're there and all that kind of thing. But how do you feel about your participation? And with online, if it's a fully online class, do you feel like you've popped into it enough? And for them, that makes them kind of reflect on, maybe should I be going to, popping into Sybil's LMS more often to do stuff? Are you receiving, another question I ask, are you receiving quality feedback from your instructor? I'm always concerned that I'm not giving them enough of that. Are you receiving quality feedback from your classmates? That's important to me too. So a lot of questions here for them to just think about at the middle. And then, like I said, at the very end, these are my favorite because I do ask them to quote the feedback that they've received, whether they've gotten that feedback from me. I think I mentioned this on Tuesday. I've moved away from feeling like my feedback is the end all be all, because if a tutor gives them really good feedback, or a chat bot, or a friend, family member, classmate, that's just as valuable. So I ask them to reflect on the feedback that they've received and cite those pieces. So some of them will say, Sybil told me this, and then I did this with it. Or I didn't like Sybil's feedback, so I went to a tutor, and that's fine. So I have them reflect on that, and then I do have them reflect. You can see at the bottom here where it says grading process reflection. I asked them to really think about what was your initial reaction to the lack of focus on grades? How do you feel about it now? And usually students say, I love that it wasn't stressful. And I love when I hear that it wasn't, that word stress. When I hear that I have alleviated some of that, I'm always kind of proud of myself that I was at least able to be that class where they didn't have to freak out or anything. Now, do I get a few students? I mean, it's been rare, but I will get a few students who have always been quote unquote A students, and they'll say, well, I didn't, I didn't love that we didn't focus on it because I pride myself in being that A student and that sort of thing. But I mean, I would say, and I'm trying to keep track with, I asked this, I had put this in a survey response actually. I'm trying to keep track. I want to say 80%, if not more, always say, I was kind of unsure about this, but it was so much less stress on me. And I love that. So just wanted to share my beginning, middle, and reflections. These kind of vary once in a while. And I think, let me close this tab. There's a link here to a process letter that I think I've used before, and you can look at that. Here's an example from a science class from the grading conference. Oh, you know what? I had it open on a different tab. Hold on, sorry. So this person teaches, I'm assuming biology, and this is their cancer. I'm hoping they're not teaching about, well, they might be teaching about cancer, I guess. What do I know? But here is a learning reflection that this instructor does in their course, and it's much more detailed than mine, which is totally fine. I think if I read through this as a student, I would understand what is expected of me, and I think that's always good to be clear, and we pride ourselves in that. So I want to share just one that's obviously not writing based, because I teach a lot of writing courses. So you can see here, To earn an A, the student has to do so many things within this list to earn a B. And so they go through and they write out their evidence basically for this reflection. And again, that is linked to the slides. So if you need to go back to that later. Here is a question I'd like to ask all of you. So question 3 is, what is your favorite reflection question? I assume you've probably asked a few or have been, or maybe it's been asked of you, but what is your favorite reflection question? Oh, thank you, Heather. I knew it was from somebody. I should put Katie's name on there. I'm gonna copy and paste the name that you gave me there because I want to give credit. And I'm gonna put, yeah. Yay. So go ahead and either, verbally or in the chat, what is your favorite reflection question? Yay.
I'm going to share out because I was going to write a novel, typing it. I don't know if this counts as a reflection. I'm not currently teaching, but back when I did, I taught a freshman level information technology course. So one of the goals was to have them learning about their technology, right? And so they needed to understand how their computer worked. What was the storage? What were the different parts? So what you get in that class is students who come in and they already know, somebody taught them their computer skills and they know it. And then you have other students that come in that have never been around someone who knows anything about computers and they know nothing. And so it was always a struggle on how to teach all those kids in the same class. So I built my own content, sort of like you did, not necessarily in a formal OER, but I'd be like, these are all the things you should probably know about storing storing files. I want you to look through this, and then I want you to reflect on something you learned, that you didn't know and why it's important and how it's going to help you. And that way they weren't all, going, why do I have to read all this? I'm like, skim it. If you know it already,
Yeah.
great, keep moving. Look, challenge yourself to find something you didn't know, and if you get to the end and you knew it all, then okay, reflect on what you would tell somebody else, but trying to have them think about the reading versus, just making them slog through it for the sake of slogging. And it was actually pretty well received, and because it was stuff that was applicable, you
Right.
know,
Well, and when you're
students took
saying
it
too, like, go
seriously.
find something you don't know, I like that. When, skim through this, if you know all this, that's great. But what sticks out to you that's something you don't know yet? And I like that because
Yeah.
there might be something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did give them the option also of saying, okay, if you didn't learn anything from this, what do you wish you knew? What's missing from this, or what could, what sort of question? And I would always address, if anyone put one of those in, I'd address it in class.
Nice.
So
Yes. Yeah, I do like to do, I think I will continue to do it. I make my syllabus and the schedule, I put them into an editable Google Doc and then give students access so they can comment. And I'll say, go find something that sticks out to you, like 3 things. There's 3 things in the schedule or 3 things and usually what ends up is like these huge conversations happen in those comment threads, which is so lovely because they comment to each other about, oh, we're so glad we're going to do this and whatever. And it's such a nice way to have like this asynchronous conversation. But yeah, I like that question. What don't you know from this chapter or from this? Yeah, I like that. Oh, David says, how might you apply? Oh, yes. How might you apply what you have learned from X to your responsibilities as a Y, where X, oh, yes. Interesting. I might steal that from you, David. I love that. I even like when I ask them to connect between a couple of classes, like okay, so you're learning some stuff in Sybil's class. Where are you learning some of these very similar things? And usually it's in other humanities courses, like with citation of sources and all that sort of thing. But I think somebody calls that the transferring of knowledge between, because do we always ask our students to make sure that they understand that so much of what they're learning in one class might overlap in another. And yeah, I love that. Anyone else have a favorite reflection question? Okay, I think we'll keep moving along here. So feedback. I don't believe, I stole the idea of tag from David Buck, who is on, or he was on Twitter, well, when I first got into ungrading. And here's just kind of a copy of what I give the students. I call it Tag You're It, but basically it's broken down into that acronym of TAG. So T stands for tell the writer something awesome about the writing. A stands for ask the writer a question about what they wrote or created. And then G is to give a suggestion. So that's one, I just want to share that that's one way I have the students give feedback to one another. That way they don't become proofreaders. I've found in the past that when I say, okay, I want you to give feedback, they'll go through and find like where the commas should go to it, for a student paper. And I'm like, well, that's nice, but Grammarly can do that. Like we probably want to know how this writing is affecting other readers. So this is where it becomes more reader based. And there's some examples here that I give them that they can use or kind of base if they can't think of anything else, they can go look at those examples. And then here's what came up at the grading conference. It is a link to a thread about high fidelity feedback. And fidelity is like this weird acronym that stands for frequent, immediate, discriminating, and done lovingly, which I thought was very interesting. So if I probably could well, you have the link if you want to copy and paste this image here, but kind of interesting way to look at feedback also. And I think the frequent thing gets tough because as teachers, if we have a lot of students, trying to do it frequently is a little time consuming. Immediate can be tough as time at times too. So I think we have to take this and kind of make it work for ourselves. I'm gonna go back to my slides here and go to my questions. So if I move the chat um, box over. All right, so questions 4 and 5 for all of you. Question 4, what is your favorite way to give feedback? And what sorts of feedback would you want as a learner? And then question 5, this is the one I'm kind of grappling with still, is how do you feel about students getting feedback from others? And maybe not just yourself, but chat bots, family members, classmates, tutors. So here are my questions for you about feedback, and I can repeat those again. Question 4, what's your favorite way to give feedback? What sorts of feedback would you like as a learner? And then how do you feel about students getting feedback from others beyond yourself and using that to inform their creations, projects, essays, that sort of thing? Again, if you want to write to yourself, that's great. If you want to share in the chat or verbally share with us, I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about these questions. Heather mentions in the chat that she loves giving verbal feedback. It's so much easier for me to process it with a student verbally. Yeah, sometimes that is just better. Jenny says, I was lucky to have 25 or fewer students, kept a flexible schedule. So yeah, giving feedback in class, I think I would really like to move towards that for fall. I try to do a lot of it in the LMS, and I think it gets lost in that Blackboard Ultra crap. So I think doing it verbally with them is better. And David says, I give audio, video, more personal, less likely. Yes. Sometimes they can get lost in the weeds like that, right? The only conundrum, I don't know if it's a conundrum or just kind of, we use Blackboard Ultra on our campus. We're all moving towards that, which I think we all could have a different session on LMSs, but and how terrible they can be, I suppose. But the one thing I did try this over intercession, which was between um, fall semester and spring, was I did try audio, and then when I had my students quote the feedback at the end of the semester, I think it was difficult for them to quote me precisely because it was audio based and not written. So I do struggle with how written feedback is easier for them to go back to and find more immediate, I guess, whereas verbal is more personal to say, hi, Sarah, blah, blah, blah. But then are they going to go back and watch the whole thing again? So whereas with a written piece, will they go skim what I said towards the middle or end of it? I don't know. I kind of go back and forth, but I do love when people take the time to, because I think I would like to get video or audio feedback. That would be nice. Yeah. Irene says, what if we ask learners? Yeah, give them some. I'm going to try that this semester, asking them to give themselves their own tag feedback. And I think it'll be interesting. Also, I'm gonna see what would they tell themselves? I mean, would they be harsh or are they gonna be kind? I don't, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, right, David. The combination of trying to give some written, some audio, right? Maybe I should just try to do a combo because I don't know if I could go all in on the plus the one element, our LMS, when the audio the like pop-up comes up on the computer, it blocks my view of their paper. So I have to like remember what I was going to say. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but that's kind of annoying. So, all right. Yes, I think I'm with Irene. Ask them to give themselves feedback. Yeah. What if this paper was your friend's? What would you tell them? I like it. Anything else we want to add to our favorite ways to give feedback? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. The metacognition. I love metacognition. Oh man. Thinking about thinking. I think it's because I'm an overthinker. If you're an overthinker already, you're already thinking about how you think. Oh my goodness. So many extra sessions we could add to all of this, right? Okay. And I'm glad Heather's here because my next slide talks about what I tell the students in my syllabus about ungrading. And I believe I stole this from Heather, or I'm pretty sure she like willingly gave us this during some other webinar or something. But here is my example. I linked to it. I love you, Heather. You have good ideas, so I steal them. But I do have a footnote. If you go to just want to prove that I love to cite my sources. So here's my syllabus from like a while ago. I apologize for the scrolling, but I'm going to show you that I do give a footnote to Heather. So it's in pink, even a pink text, which you're probably not supposed to do, but here's my footnote. Pieces of this section came from the syllabus of Dr. Heather Maselli because she's awesome and she shares her ideas publicly. So I love it. But if we go back to what it actually says, I'll just read it out loud to all of you. So I just put in the syllabus, it says a few words about grading. I know we're supposed to have a grading policy, and I'm sure you all are supposed to have a grading policy and all that jazz. The instructor of this course subscribes to a philosophy of assessment called ungrading, where there are no grades on individual assignments. In this course, grades only really serve as a source of anxiety, even on low stakes assignments. So I want to acknowledge, I love that she acknowledges the anxiety. I like to acknowledge it because I have anxiety, so I love that part. Next piece. Instead, this course is designed for you to explore your writing abilities without having grades hanging over your heads on a daily basis, especially if we cover topics that may be difficult or uninteresting. This does not mean that I will be, this does not mean I will not be reading and checking on your progress. Through all of our activities, you will be getting extensive feedback from me to improve over time. And then your grade will ultimately be determined through self-assessments and meetings with me. I have learned over time that I can trust students to be honest about their grades. In these self-assessments, I do reserve the right to veto any points that are not assessed honestly. I don't remember if that was in Heather's to begin with, but I put that in there and she might have, I can't remember exactly. But the reason I bring up the veto is, unfortunately, I have had some students, weirdly enough, they are typically from a specific gender and race. So the white student, white boy, white male student. I have had a few assess themselves very dishonestly, and I've had to say, no, 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 you didn't do this part of the, so it's unfortunate that I sometimes do have to veto points, and it's unfortunate that it always seems to be a certain group of a demographic of student. But there are one, I guess, if you get into a class and you see that you're going to self-assess and you really don't want to, you don't have the motivation to allot yourself the time and devotion to learning how to write a little bit better or what have you in Sybil's class, you might just go through the self-assessments and say, I'm doing all of it, blah, blah, take all the tests and give yourself all the points. And then unfortunately, I've had to say, no, but you didn't actually do this thing. I don't have evidence. Like you didn't actually hand in the project. I don't have evidence of what you just supposedly assessed. So, and Heather, yeah, Jesse Stommel's got great stuff too. Uh, yeah, I think it's helpful to put it in there. I wish I could take that veto part out, but every semester I do have maybe one student who just says they did something and I have to say, but okay, I need to see it. Like even if you think it's quote unquote crap, I still want to see that you did something with this outcome or assessment. So there's that. Okay, now we're kind of getting close to wrap up here. My questions in orange text say, if you are new to ungrading or alternative grading, how would you dip your toes in? So I think some of you are already there. But here, if you know of any faculty who are really kind of squeamish about doing any of this, the first thing I did was I lowered my point value. So I don't have 100 point like projects anymore. Because I felt like when they would get a 0 on those, it would just destroy like I'm not a math person, but it just destroyed it destroyed the ability to kind of get out of that hole. So now like some things are 10 points, most things are 1 or 2. I just kind of keep everything very low key. I've added in a lot of reflection, like I showed you all. I don't put the feedback next to the letter grade. That's kind of separate. I think you've probably all heard of the studies that show that when students are given like a paper back and they see feedback next to a letter grade, they don't even read the feedback. They go, oh, I got a B, and they throw the paper. I actually had a student do that in front of me when I taught at NDSU years ago. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me at the time to stop putting a letter grade next to the feedback. But anyway, so if you have other ideas that how people can dip their toes in, feel free to put those in the chat or bring them up verbally. And then if you are, whether you're new to this or not, do you plan to try out anything new this coming fall? And I think that's kind of going to wrap. The next slide is resources. So my last couple of questions to you are just any other ideas that you would give to a person starting out with all of this? And is there anything you're going to try out this fall with alternative grading? And I'm going to read your chat while you are thinking about that. Yeah, Heather brings up how doing a couple of different self-assessments at different levels of the or at different times of the semester. And yeah, I think that first self-assessment when they realize how to do it, what I want that to look like, that is very important. We are social learners who bring different perspectives. Yes, I find it. I love Padlet. I'm trying to get our campus to get a Padlet license. Oh, I love when they can like talk to each other on that. I don't know if I've played with Is it called mural? Mural? That one sounds interesting. Oh, nice. And Heather says, my first step was to remove my exams and rate reflections on a scale of 0 to 4. Oh, I like it. All right. And then Jenny says, I always suggest that faculty look for ways for students to learn from the mistakes, get rid of the one and done. Yeah, I would say my buddy on campus, I call him my work brother. He teaches chemistry, and I really want him to move away from the one and done tests, but he is a stubborn mule. I just can't get him to think about it. Yeah, so did you have your hand up and I missed it here? I hope that hasn't been on. You haven't had your hand up forever, have you? Shoot.
No, it's not forever, but I just thought that you're engaged, so I would have written the chat. You know, this whole thing of grades, that you have to submit a grade to the institution at the end, and then I was really exposed to this twice in my undergraduate degree. Once in my writing course, which was a freshman first year course, and once with Maha, and then this kind of thing that, oh, if you wrote in the reflection that if I were to do this again, I would do X and Y and Z, and then you would get the grade on the X and Y and Z that you would have done better if you'd have more time. And then I think that's a great strategy for just improving on the work and just realizing how things may become, you know, sort of subpar at some time. And
Yeah.
last term, I also had like to write a 4,000 to 5,000 word research paper, which was a like high stakes paper. And then I didn't have time. I know that I did really bad on some parts, and I know that some literature wasn't connected well with some parts. And I lost grades because I know that these parts were not really done quite well. So if we would be graded on, I wouldn't say the intention, but the realization that you can do better in these and these and these, and then it's about the assessment and the reflection. So yeah.
I love that. Yes, thank you for sharing. Right. Yeah, to be able to do it, yeah, to know what you missed and then go back and go, oh, right, I see that I missed something, and just to, yeah. We revise all the time. I mean, why not allow our students to do that? It's a very good question. We are coming up on the hour. I want to share my last slide here of resources. Some of you gave me a couple of the ones at the top here. There's the Grading for Growth book that's out there. There's an inclusive teaching book, the hybrid pedagogy website. There's an article about rigor. There's a lot of stuff. And then I did put, so you have access to the links that were in this slide deck, but also I have my own like collection, and I have it open on Google, but the very last link there is to my collection of OER and ungrading things. And so feel free to use that if you find anything in there that, you know, floats your boat. For I love my euphemisms, so I'm sorry, but if you find something that really you want to use, go for it. Oh, and we have, yeah, that's right, Josh has a new book. I gotta put the following, Failing Our Future. Can I copy and paste this guy? Yes, I'm gonna do that. I'm sure the chat will be, there we go. Yes, that's gonna be a good one too. Perfect. Oh, Jenny, that's interesting. I can maybe bring that up to my work brother. Two-part tests, so they took them individually and then as a group. Oh, wild.
Yeah, there's a great article. I have it somewhere, but I'm not finding it
Well, it's all
quickly.
good. I'll just, hey,
But-
as long as I have ammunition to kind of like throw at him, I love it. So
but
I'll just bring it up.
she was struggling, and I was like, what if you try this? I was like, I haven't used it, so I can't speak to it, but I said, I think it would work really well in your situation. And she was using it. She'd only given, I think, one test before I left my previous university, but she was really happy with the way it went. And it's, like I said, it was something the article happened during the pandemic. But it doesn't have to be, like, they were using it during the pandemic, but it doesn't have to be in that situation. And
Right.
it, like I said, she was actually really, really thrilled with it. So I'm not quite sure how to share it. Like I said, I know I have it somewhere.
Well, if you find it, yeah, if you send it to Christina or Maha or Yasser,
Yeah.
maybe we can send it out, whatever. It's all good. But yeah, that's really, yeah. I mean, why not try something like that? That sounds really interesting. And if it doesn't work, then, I guess you revise it and try something different.
Well, I always tell when I'm trying to convince faculty to try new things, I'm like, you tell your students, I'm all about learning from mistakes. So I'm
Right.
trying this and I hope it works. But if it doesn't, then we'll learn something from it and we'll figure out what to do differently next time. And I always did that when I was teaching at the end of the semester. I'd say, okay, the purpose of this assignment was to do this. Did that work for you? Did it not work for you? What could, because sometimes I was like, oh, that didn't work. So
Yeah.
I'd ask for feedback from the students on how could I make it do that better?
Yes.
And they always have good ideas.
They do. And I think Heather might have found, well, at least it might not be the article you're speaking to, but she found some of at least one website talking about two-stage exams. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try to put those I'm gonna open those up and put those back in that slide deck so that if
Yeah.
anybody.
Mine was, I think, a little less of a formal and more of people
Gotcha.
like, it was from when people were looking during
Right.
the pandemic on.
Well, I know that all of our science
So-
teachers on campus really struggled to figure out how to do labs for one, and then the tests and all, I mean that, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that looks like some good resources though.
Definitely.
Yeah, I did some two-stage testing, I want to say as far back as 2014, in a big, large lecture hall, like 300 students in an A&P class. And I was a graduate student watching it, and it was so interesting to see them take a test. And then the room was so loud when they were doing the collaborative work. And it's I think ultimately the test grade is 75% their individual score and then 25% the collaborative score. So it's not like a huge impact, but it does increase their grade. And then they've had the time to collaborate and talk about that. The only thing I found when I tried it myself is that if you have a group that is not, I don't know, it takes time. It takes a ton of time because you have to have that extra. I mean, you think, okay, you have to write a test that not only can be completed in the time period, but also to be retaken.
Yeah.
So I've also seen it instead of giving the whole test, you only give a subset of questions too. So I think the A&P one, it was there was a 60 question multiple choice exam, and then there were 20 questions from the exam that they did in the group. And then that collaborative grade was you got not extra points, but it helped boost your grade because ideally it was better. And you couldn't get less than your individual score. So if your individual score was 80 and the group got a 75, you still got an 80.
Okay. I like that. Interesting. I learn from other people. You see, you share your own nerdiness, and then you get more nerdiness back, and it's lovely. And thank you. It was so awesome to geek out with all of you.